good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser. It's a Monday morning, so it's definitely grumpy, especially this morning. John and I know we have both been struggling to get up. Some guy who's been up for a while is Callie out there. It looks like he's on the beach, but sadly he's not. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. I'm actually here at work, sitting outside. So if you hear a plane flying overhead or something, I'm very sorry, but I'm here ready to go.
Ryan is on time, which is like a rarity, so he mentions it every time he's online. Good morning. And John is with us this morning, as always. What's happening?
Well, I'm using the tall mug because it's a Monday, so need all the coffee I can get. So, yeah, I think that pretty much says it all.
It's been rough. It's been rough
Right.
start to the morning. I was just mentioning it to John before we went on air that, yeah, I probably slept too long, and that kind of like backfires on me somehow, where I'm even more groggy. I'm better off just sleeping like 4 hours or something like that. Okay, a couple of news to get to. Actually, a bunch of stuff to get to. These are the ones that pretty much we selected for the most part, I would say. We talked about this, I think it was on Friday. So let me bring that one up first so we can cover that. But Mason Mount, this whole ordeal of him going on with United and the money and all that kind of stuff. So now so John, is this just transfer politics and negotiation tactics where United are like, oh, you know what? There's actually other guys we're looking at too. Maybe we'll go there so that Chelsea drops the price.
Yeah.
Or can we come in and scoop up Mason Mount in this ordeal now?
Well, I think both can pretty much are at play rather, because Mason Mount, he hasn't been good the last few years, but despite all that, I would still have him at Liverpool. I think he'd fit us perfectly. He's a hard worker. So when United were off to sign him, I admittedly was a little bummed, but at the same time, I do think that the amount that United were willing to pay for him was a little too much. So I think, for their perspective, I think this is the right move to, push him aside for the meantime, look at other alternatives. Caicedo is 1,000% a better player, and I feel like he would fit them better than Mount ever could. So if I was a United fan, I would be happy at this piece of news.
I guess that's a good point.
Right.
That's a good point. Justin's with us. Good morning, Justin. As is Alan, as always.
Shout out to my boy Justin. Yeah, that's my friend, right? Yeah.
And Ryan says, I would love to have him. I guess let's start with that question, Callie. Would you like us to get Mount? And does this give us an opportunity, or it's just a negotiation tactic by United?
I think it's a bit of both. I think we. As long as the ink hasn't been thrown onto the paper, there's a chance, right? I think Mason fits kind of Klopp's mold for this team really well. I would love to have him here. As soon as those rumors started swirling, I was really excited about it. But obviously we're not gonna spend top dollar for certain guys, and if Chelsea's asking price is what it is, and it seems like that's something they're not budging on, then maybe it's time to look elsewhere. If we can swing it, I'd love it. Caicedo obviously is the more appealing option, but I would take Mount in a heartbeat. I wouldn't think about it, to be honest. I think he would fit here much better than he fits currently at Chelsea.
Right.
So okay, sounds like we're all in agreement that we would love to have Mason Mount if the price is right, but we don't want to spend top dollar either. So what is your top dollar? How much you saying? That's a good deal. I'll take him. I mean, you can underball and say 20 million, but something reasonable that you think Chelsea will take, John, and you will consider it a pretty good deal for us as well.
35 to 40. 35 to 40 for sure.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
Right. Really, man? Yeah. I don't think that's happening. 50. How about 50 people? Come on, it's Mason. He's English.
50.
You got to pay the English tax, right?
Yes, that's the thing.
English tax,
he's English. So 50 for an English Mason. Going once. I
wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no to 50 million for Mason. And I know you have to
gentleman with the hat.
Player too. So.
Yeah, you know what? I raised 55.
Well, Ryan is at 55. Okay.
That's my line in the sand.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I mean, I think 50 is a good amount, and I think I'd be okay with that because I agree with Callie. I think he fits so well.
Mm.
I mean, if it was an unknown, if they said like Thuram is coming for 50 or 55, I think I'd be like, oh man, I hope this works out. I feel like I'd be a lot more confident knowing maybe we watched them more, or we feel like his strengths really fit what Klopp likes to do. So like there's certain players which we'll talk about next, like Bobby, for example, that might not be as valuable to a lot of teams, but is a lot more valuable to this team. So let's get to that. So Bobby is reportedly going to Saudi Arabia, and I thought the longest time the talk was he's going to Barcelona and something like that. So, Callie, is this disappointing to you to hear that Bobby's taking the cash and going over to Saudi Arabia instead?
Yeah. So Bobby Firmino is my favorite player to ever play for Liverpool that I've seen, not named Steven Gerrard, if I'm being quite honest. It hurts because, you know, you hate to see him kind of take that route. I think I would have been disappointed no matter where he ended up, just because, you know, it's not Liverpool. And I saw the Real Madrid ties. I saw, you know, a lot of ties to Spanish clubs, Italian clubs, stuff like that. So, I mean, nothing's official yet. Everything is still kind of on the rumor mill, and you know how kind of football media can be. So I'm not, you know, planting my feet in the dirt until I see something a little more official, but it would be really disappointing if he did sign for a Saudi Arabian club.
How about you, John? I mean, it's already disappointing enough that he's leaving. Is it better in some ways that he doesn't go to a team like Barcelona? We're going to watch him in the Champions League. He's going to come off the bench and score some goals or something like that. And we're going to be like, man, we should have kept him. Is this better, out of sight, out of mind?
Right. In a way, but I do feel like you know, everyone here loves Bobby, I assume. We do want the best for him, and he still can play at a top level, at a top club, like being realistic. He was our second top scorer last year behind Mo, which, considering how much games he missed, was really surprising. And yeah, I do feel like he still has 1-2 good years left at the top level. So granted, to answer your question, I don't blame him for taking that money. Like I said, it's a life, like we are talking about in the Discord, it's a life-changing amount of money. So, you know, good on you, Bobby. You do you. But to answer your question, Tim, I get the whole thing where it's out of sight, out of mind. But for his career, I do feel like 1 to 2 more years at the top level would have served him better, honestly.
But would he start in any of those teams? I mean, he wouldn't. He'd be a bench guy.
He wouldn't.
He wanted to be a guy who still goes out there, starting 11 and start playing. So I can see, and not to mention, gets paid handsomely for it. I mean, there's a ton of kids, but I mean, I don't know, like if it's an area that he's gonna go for a year or two, really cash in. I guess I blame we talked about this before, guys who are pretty much signing their last contract. Yeah. I blame less than guys who have more opportunity to sign contracts and stuff. But I mean, the prime example of that was Neves, and then we found that out about other shady schemes. So that doesn't really, you know, so that could be another reason why he signed there. Yeah, when I saw the news, I wasn't shocked. He was like, what? He's going to Saudi Arabia? But it's kind of like, yeah, I think wherever he lands, you're right. When we see him in another jersey, similar to Milner, really, when we see these guys in a different jersey, it's just going to be like, just going to feel a little icky in some ways. Yeah, I hear it. Okay, so another news over here. We got a bunch of small headlines to get to today. Luis Diaz to wear number 7 jersey for 23-24. We were talking about this before we went on air with John. It does suit him a lot more in terms of what he does and stuff. But let me ask you this, Callie. Do you even care the number of the jersey that a player wears?
In this case, yes, because I already bought a Luis Diaz 23 jersey. But
I hear they're refunding that, Callie. They're yeah, they have a return policy, I believe. Like if he changes number, you should be good.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll keep it just to you know, because I think eventually it becomes one of those pieces like, oh yeah, I have a Diaz jersey, but you know, still wearing 23.
Yeah, you become an OG. Like I'm an OG Diaz fan.
Exactly. But no, man, I think whenever you get it into one of those you know, single digit top 11 numbers, you know, I think it says a lot as to kind of where you're at in the club and within the club culture itself. So I think it's awesome. I think it's cool that Diaz is recognized this way. I think he's played brilliantly with us in the short time he's been here, and obviously he dealt with injuries this year and all that stuff. But I think this is a piece that's can potentially contribute to this team for a long time. 8-10 years hopefully. So
Yeah,
I love it. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't remember a lot of guys changing numbers and then just being like, moved out the next season and stuff. Is that why he's changing numbers, John? So he can stick around? He was like, look, I just got a new number. There's no way I'm moving now.
Well, it could be part of it, but I feel like it's definitely more of a it's more of a stigma kind of thing. Flair players, attacking players, like they prefer the 7s, the 10s, the 9s, and all of that. And I do think it suits Diaz more. There's something aesthetically pleasing about seeing Diaz just burst past someone wearing the number 7 jersey. I don't know. Like it's kind of like the idea of Darwin Nunez bagging goals wearing that number 9 jersey. Again, it's an idea, but it's a nice idea. Right?
I guess, yeah,
it's a nice idea. so yeah, I'm all for it. I always thought, as much as I loved Millie, wearing that number 7 was a little weird, especially considering who wore it before him. I believe it was Suarez. So yeah, I'm all for this change. Definitely. We'll hold off on getting any jerseys. We'll definitely hold off getting any jerseys for now, though, just to be sure.
Only buying single digits moving forward.
Right.
I mean, I just honestly, that's why I don't think I have any jerseys that have a name on the back. They're all like no names on the back, and mainly because of this reason, if nothing else. But yeah, is that kind of a deal for you though, Callie? Like a specific number, like the 8, when Keita got the 8, it was such a huge deal. They were like, oh, he's taking Gerard's number and stuff. Do you think that adds to the pressure to the player, or they couldn't care less because they're not that tied to the history over there anyway?
I think it depends on the player. It's definitely case by case. I remember when Keita got the 8, I think I was kind of in the same camp as a lot of people. Like those are that's a big number to fill. It's easy to look at a club and look at the history of who's worn the number before it, and so much history is tied to the number. So I think guys that maybe have English ties or maybe Western European ties probably value that a lot more, and to other guys it's more kind of like John said. It's more like the flair. It's getting themselves kind of in that conversation of one of the top players at the club type of thing. So,
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's the thing. I don't get tied to the number as much, but like number 8 I thought was a prime example, just because you watch it year after year after year, and not to mention when the guy becomes a club legend wearing that number, it's kind of like hard to be like, oh, now this guy is wearing it. I think probably much rather do what Diaz did, perhaps, come with a 2-digit weird number, and then once you get established, then be like, you know what, I want it to be 8 all along anyway. I'm just gonna go to the 8 kind of a deal. But so like last jersey you bought then, John, with the number on the back was Alisson Becker. I should have said that's a pretty good one. So speaking of Alisson Becker, goal of the season for Liverpool was the one where Ali assists Mo against City. And you said, John, before the show, you agreed to this. Tell me why.
Okay, so it's not the most aesthetically pleasing goal. It's not going to be in like goal of the decade by any means necessary. But I did say to Tim before the show started, it was my number 1 purely because how much I celebrated it. We were at that point of the season, we were pretty mediocre in terms of form. City came in, we beat them 1-0 because of that goal. I thought it was going to be a change. I thought it was going to be a shift in everything. Like, oh, we're going to start getting back to winning ways. And obviously we didn't, but at the time I thought we would. So that's why that goal meant a lot to me. And that's why I still have it at number 1, because of how much I've celebrated it. But yeah, I agree in terms of like aesthetics, in terms of technique, it's not the most pleasing thing. The way he turns Cancelo was pretty good, and Alisson's kick, again, spot on, but there are better goals. I agree, Tim, but it's still my personal number 1.
I think it's one of those things where it's like a season we want to forget. So like, don't even want to remember the goals to pick one. I think that goal reminds me a lot about the one that he scored against United. Like Ali to Mo, runs James all the way down. And that goal had so much more meaning to me that I don't want to put this in the same category in my head. But Callie, I don't know if you remember, I mean, Trent's free kick goal, Nunez's goal, there's sadly not a lot to choose from, but still there's quite a few. Were you okay with the selection? Did you have a different one in mind?
No, I think it's I think especially like that the Ali to Mo that assist, like we've seen it in big moments before, and obviously the United one. I'll never forget where I was for that one. I was actually in New York in a Liverpool bar, watching that one, and then seeing Mo rip his shirt off was second to none. But to see it against City, especially like John mentioned, considering the form we were in and kind of how we've been looking and kind of how like emotionally depleting the season has been, to see that was like, okay, we have some life. We definitely have some life. I think another one that kind of deserves mention too is the equalizer against Newcastle early on in the season.
The Diaz one?
Yeah, that we scored in the 95th or something like that, like time running out. Newcastle had been time wasting, all that stuff, and then to pop it in like that. Yeah. That was big.
I think that thing about the City game was the fact that it almost was semi aggravating at the same time. I think, John, at the time, because like you said, we were so like in shambles, and when you watch that game, you were like, man, if everybody's head is in it, we can still play really good.
Yeah.
But was it one of those cases where we just could not do that on a consistent basis every 90, and then we kind of saved it and mustered it for that game, and then kind of blew our load, and then just went downhill afterwards anyway?
All right, absolutely. To your point about us flipping the switch, as the phrase goes, that's the best our defense has looked the entire year, and then it just disappeared. Like that's the best I've seen Van Dijk play since the year we won the league, and then he just drifted. So, yeah, that whole thing against City, I dare say it gave us some hope that, oh, we still got it, even though we clearly don't. That's been the whole thing. It was a bait and switch, as people would say. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get back to that level where, we just go up against a top team at Anfield and beat them. The crowd absolutely, being raucous and all that. But yeah, the City game was basically us in a nutshell. We can turn up from time to time, but then I believe it was the next game against Forest, or whoever we faced right after that City game, where we absolutely floundered and lost 0-1, I believe. So again, those two games, the City game and the game right after, is just us in a nutshell this year, man. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's almost like Cali, that was almost saying this team is freaking tired. They still have it. They can kind of put it together, but not on a consistent basis anymore because just tired. But I'll be honest, that was one thing that I kind of made me say, especially I think it was like, yeah, I think you're right. I think it was Forest or Leeds. It's made me say, you know what, this team has a good shot at the Champions League, because if they put the focus in single games, in elimination games, we can go really far. It's going to be one of those seasons where the league is going to go to crap, but we'll do well in the Champions League. Sadly, we couldn't muster that either. But do you put that on like lack of focus throughout, where they could put it into one game against City?
I think, I mean, yeah, like John mentioned, like the kind of the duality of like the Manchester game and then like our games against Forest or Bournemouth or Southampton or any of those. It's like we play up to the competition, but we'd also very much play down to the competition. I mean, it's so tough to pinpoint what went wrong, considering we had a treble going into the last day last year, and then this year we just couldn't string together some consistent performances. Man, it's a squad that just looked tired. The midfield, looked just bad, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone, and they kind of pointed it to me in a way that, maybe as an outsider, as someone who's not a Liverpool fan, probably sees it in a way that we don't, is that it looks like maybe we were like a year late on like a refresh on the midfield, and then unfortunately Verge, since the injury and since the knee surgery, it looks like he's maybe lost a step, and it's unfortunate to see, but I think and I also think the World Cup just made it a weird year in the Premier League also, the World Cup being what it is. I think a lot of guys played a lot of football early on, and maybe that contributed to it too. There's a lot of factors, man. It was disappointing, but I think we kind of saw towards the end how, even despite as bad of a season we've had, towards the end we were there on the cusp of Champions League of Champions League football. So, I mean, if anything, it paints a positive future moving forward, especially with McAllister and some of the other names we're tied to now moving forward.
Yeah, I think when we kind of like were stumbling towards the World Cup, the hope was like after the World Cup, Jota is back, Diaz is back, and we talked about it here like with hope, and then really Diaz couldn't come back right away, and yeah, I mean Jota was back, but the team wasn't after the World Cup, so it really did not matter. And yeah, disappointing season overall, and I think I agree. I mean that midfield really should have been done slowly over the last 2-3 transfer windows,
Yeah.
But so far we only have one. So, John, let me ask you this. There's a lot of impatience and frustration around not getting anybody across the line aside from McAllister. Because, it's fandom. Once a guy's across the line, we acted like it never happened. We kind of we're like, who else? What else you got? And stuff like that. Is that because you see all these signings in other clubs? If nobody else was signing anybody, would people be as impatient?
Well, I think it plays a part. And again, Tim, it's Monday morning. You're gonna get me started on ranting about FSG, like like Kazi is on the Discord. But yeah, I think it plays a part. Seeing Newcastle being linked to all these guys, United being linked to all these guys. Granted, none of them, with the exception of Chelsea, couldn't have signed anyone yet. Like it's a lot of links. But then not a lot of confirmed deals, with the exception of Chelsea, who signed 3 players now. But I guess I could say, like to my point on last Wednesday's morning show, it's the urgency, right? Like I feel like the club, McAllister is a good start, but then ever since McAllister, it's been a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes, and we can't afford to have an if, buts, and maybes transfer window. Like simply put, if we come in to the season with just McAllister as our signing, that's like I could totally get the sentiment. Like this transfer window is just starting. That's right. That's fact. But we know how the club is. They're very much a cut price kind of, like a cut price deal is definitely what they're going to be looking for first and foremost. In terms of what we need, we might need to go past our comfort zone, so to speak. We need to go past cut price deals. We need to actually put in like a good solid 50-60, I think, at some point. And I believe it was Alex or Kazi posted on the Discord that we might just sign someone big out of the blue. I surely hope so, because everyone is I go through the depths of Twitter and see what everyone has to say. The fan base is getting impatient, and I am to an extent, but again, my trust in Klopp kind of like assures me during my darkest moments, not to be dramatic, but it just assures me during my darkest moments. But yeah, to answer your question, Tim, definitely hope that we are in the process of at least, getting like 2 or 3 more in, but definitely McAllister is not enough. We need to get in more players.
Yeah, if you don't sign anybody, we're gonna have to do a freaking wellness check on John over here. But Ryan says, I feel like the fact that it has been kind of quiet is a good sign, but that may be wishful thinking. And Chris Strait is in the house, our resident DJ. A lot of new money flying around Newcastle, Saudi League, etc. Definitely having an effect on the wheel. He says patience, and also we do like Chris says, we do our best work in the background, and I think. If this was 2 years ago, Callie, I would not worry as much, because kind of like what Chris says, there's always stuff happening in the background, and suddenly they pop a guy that we never heard of, even the newspapers, or the sites couldn't come up with and stuff. But I think I have PTSD from last summer, where I'm just afraid that it's going to be Arthur's brother coming in or something like that in the last minute. And I think that's what's maybe perhaps a lot of fans are worried about as well. Where are you at with it? Do we need a wellness check on you as well?
Not yet. I'm a little bit. I'm not there just yet. But yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I think that our best signings have often been ones that weren't heavily rumored or heavily discussed. Some of the bad ones as well, but it's end of June. Like, I'm not panicking yet. There's still so much time, and I hate to say I trust the club and the front office to kind of figure it out, but this can't be the only signing, and I think they know that. Like, McAllister can't be can't be it. So I think we just need to let things play out. This is a team that likes to be kind of secretive as to what they leak out there and who's connected to what and all that stuff. And our last few big signings have been that way. And I'm not a John yet, but I am starting to panic because, like, I forgot who mentioned it, that the Saudi money and the Saudi league in general floating around, Newcastle being a player for big names now too, and Chelsea seems to just want to throw a bunch of money at everything and everyone all the time. There's a lot of new factors, but FSG have historically kind of bargain shopped, but we've figured out how to get some quality out of that too. So I'm pumping the brakes a little bit. I'm in a wait and see mode right now.
Yeah, and Chris says last year was Julian Ward. We have a new sporting director, a bunch of experience, have more hopes this season. But I think the new sporting director, if he brings anything, I think it would be some guys that not even websites I've heard of out of the Bundesliga or something like that, like people with potential. I don't know if he's going to bring names that is going to, I mean, they might be great, but it's not going to calm John's nerves, right, John? Like, you're still going to be like, but how about, so where's the confidence level? Has the confidence level, I think, in the past, like I say, we were like, we know what we're doing. So even if we got somebody like that, like, people who had not heard of, we always felt like, you know what, they know what they're doing. And like, Cali was doing, you can be like, boom, 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 list like 5-6 examples of guys that were not a big hoopla when we signed, but then obviously performed well. Where is your confidence level overall with it?
Let's say we signed someone from the Bundesliga. I would still be pretty confident, because I do think the fact that we just desperately need bodies in there. Like, I'm not saying that it's like a quantity over quality kind of thing. Like, we just get in whoever. But this dude, Schmadke, he seems like he knows what he's doing. He got the McAllister thing done really quickly, which was really good. Again, I'm just feeling a little uneasy because we are under an immense amount of pressure to get back in to the levels that we are in, and the likes of Salah, Virgil, Allison, they're not getting any younger. So we do have a limited window here, whether we like it or not. Trent's pretty young, so he'll be a mainstay with us for quite a bit. But those three guys, I feel like, are the spine of our team, and they're not getting any younger. So that's kind of what's getting to me right now. Our best players are reaching their twilight years, so to speak. So, in terms of your question, Tim, I would be confident as well because of the fact that we're just doing something. Again, it's not just we just have to get someone in sort of thing. I do trust Klopp, and that's the only thing that's keeping me sane throughout this whole ordeal. It's just I trust him. I trust Schmadke because he's his buddy. So if we get in 2 or 3 players from the Bundesliga that's not Premier League proven, I think we'd ease them in. I don't think Klopp would start them right away, but in terms of confidence, I'm 100% confident he'll get them up to speed, and they'll be immediate contributors because it's what we need right now, bodies.
But then, Kelly, is it fair to say that if it's going to be unknowns, and Chris says he prefers unknowns to less pressure, and I think we saw that on Nunez a lot too when we do a big money signing, the pressure is immense. Yeah. But if we're going to do unknowns, is it just me that I would feel a lot more comfortable with an unknown signing now as opposed to the end of the window, because then it looks more like an emergency break glass kind of a signing?
Yeah, that's an interesting point that I hadn't thought out. Obviously, like, if we're gonna get guys in, I want them in now. Like, I don't want to wait. I don't want to play this waiting game, getting to the end of the window. The perception is that when you sign a guy towards the end of the window, typically you're paying more than you probably should have. Typically, it's a matter of, option A's, B, and C didn't work out, so let me go after this guy. But I think considering how the club has been spending lately and considering, really what we need, I think we're going to see probably more so younger, unknown guys coming in, just because I don't think we need like a superstar to come in right now. I think up front we've done the refresh already. We have young guys in there. We have Jota, we have Diaz, we have Nunez, we have Gakpo. The midfield's really the need that it's a glaring need where we need to get younger and we need to get more. And we do need, in a sense, more quantity at that position. So I'm thinking that we're going to take a chance, probably, and the numbers I've seen kind of being thrown around, like the was it 25 million offered for Kone type of numbers. Like, I think that's about what we should expect kind of moving forward in regards to kind of our needs. And we're not going to get a superstar with that type of money either. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Definitely not getting Mason Mount for 55. That's for sure. Yeah. I feel like we need to sign 5 people, says Ryan. At least 2, hopefully 3, at least 1 defender, or 2 if you only sign 2 midfielders. So ideally 3 midfielders and 2 defenders. I feel like that is too many midfielders in some ways. I just don't know if Klopp is going to bring 4 new guys to the midfield, but we did lose several players out of that. I mean, we lost 3 players out of that midfield, but I feel like that's where a player like Bajcetic would be a new signing, if you will, and then he would be like counted as part of that crew, as he should be. He deserves so, as long as he's coming back healthy. So what is your shopping list looking like now? I mean, the key, John, is one thing you said was we're almost like approaching the end of a window. So like Van Dijk, you said, Mo, you said coming to the end, and going back to what Callie was saying earlier, we were a season late in doing this midfield refresh.
For sure.
If we just focus on midfield and ignore the defenders, like Ryan wants defenders as well, and I totally agree. This next year, this time, we might be doing the same show. Now Callie is saying, hey, my buddies are telling me we waited an extra year on the defending refresh, and it probably would be right. So what is your ideal scenario looking like right now? Ryan says that's including McAllister. So Ryan's saying 2 more midfielders, 2 more defenders. I'm on board. Sign me up. Where are we at with it? What do you think this team needs where you'll be comfortable with, like, that was a solid window without looking at anybody else? If they announced it tomorrow, this is all we were doing. Here are the names. Here are the signatures. Here are the photos. What is your ideal scenario?
Right. I think in attack we're pretty sorted. I'm expecting a big season from Nunez next year. I think Gakpo. It's Salah, Gakpo, Diaz, Jota, and Nunez. That's 5 solid first team attackers. I think we're fine there. Midfield, of course. I would say 2 midfielders, one not necessarily from the Premier League, and another Premier League proven one, because I do feel like Hendo can't be trusted to do consecutive games anymore. And like you mentioned in past shows, Tim, his best role is probably coming off the bench to just shore things up when we got the lead or something. So that's the ideal scenario for Henderson. So I do feel like McAllister plus a defender who could, a midfielder who could play both defensive and center mid to cover either Henderson or Fab if need be would be ideal. And so that's 2 midfielders, 1 not necessarily from the Premier League and 1 Premier League proven, and 1 defender to cover for Konate or Van Dijk, which, let's be real, Konate's injury history isn't as good. I'm not sure if Matip's going to be staying, and if we're going to be persisting with this new system towards the end of the year last year, I don't think Matip's as good a fit compared to Joe Gomez. And this is coming from a Matip, apologist. I love Joel Matip, but I do think he's past his prime, and he's a bit too slow to cover. Like, he typically plays on that right side where Konate plays now. The whole system is the right center back essentially has to go one-on-one with any attacker there because Trent is too high up. So I don't think Matip doesn't have the speed anymore to do that. So definitely someone who can cover for Konate or Virgil, a 2-sided center back, and 2 midfielders, 1 Premier League proven and 1 not necessarily Premier League. I would say it's a success alongside McAllister. I would say it's a success.
See, the thing that makes this season tricky is,
right,
and that was like, I set up the question, and yeah, it's a question to set up for you to fail, unfortunately, because we don't know what's going to happen in certain positions. So it's kind of hard to determine the need, especially in the back line. If Trent is playing, like Chris says, if Trent is playing the switch role, there's no one to replace, but we don't know what's going to happen with Trent. Like, then, because, if I tell you, yeah, Trent is going to move up a lot more, then you might say, yeah, we definitely need a right back then. If you say, nope, he's a right back, that was just an experiment, well, we don't know. Or it was like, that was just a need because we didn't have the center back to cover it, or whatever the case might be. It kind of makes it tricky to foresee what we're going to need. One thing we did talk about, so Callie, before I pass on the same question to you, one thing we did talk about, I don't know if it was Friday or Wednesday last week, is if Mo is going to AFCON again.
He is.
So we have that this year. And if you have another injury in the front line, that leaves you down to 3 suddenly. And I don't think any one of us trusted Elliott or somebody like that on the wing. Does that also open up a need up top for you, Callie? And I'll pose the same question to you. What will make you sleep well at night knowing the business is done?
Yeah, Mo going to AFCON is definitely something that we need to consider. We kind of saw the glaring hole that we had the last time that happened. But I think Chris brought up exactly kind of my concern is if Trent is going to start playing a little more central, he's going to start playing a little more attack-minded, then I think we need a solid, dependable right back to come in and kind of fill that gap. And also, I think the question we need to start asking ourselves, and it's almost weird to say it out loud, is the eventual Virgil replacement. Who's coming after him? Are we trusting Ibu despite his injury history? Is there someone, within the academy or the lower leagues that we can kind of plug in there, or what's the market look like for that type of replacement? Just because Virgil's been to me the foundation of the team, in this run that we've had.
Absolutely.
And but I think it's starting again after the surgery. He's kind of lost a step. He kind of got exposed a few times. He definitely wasn't at his best, and that can be a plethora of factors. But I think it's a conversation that needs to start happening. A guy that can come in and kind of start assuming some of those responsibilities. And I think everyone, we see the midfield and we know we need at least, we have McAllister. I think we need at the very, very least 2 more guys to come in. And we need to start kind of thinking about what comes next for the back line, especially in the middle. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not in panic mode with doing all those things right away, but I think if Trent's going to start playing more centrally, I think we do need to consider a serviceable and dependable right back option, and we definitely need to start thinking about the future of our center backs.
What would you guys think if we bought another center half and we moved Gomez permanently to right back?
Yeah, I'd be open to it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, actually. I know Gomez gets a lot of hate, but I think Gomez has
I'm a big Gomez fan for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, it's kind of like what Lovren has become. But to answer that question, I would want it on a game-by-game basis. Like, I don't want to be like, okay, if you said Trent is a midfielder now, are you taking Gomez as right back? I'm like, no. If it's like last year, but at times we're going to need, based on the game, a right back to play behind Trent, then I'm okay with that, if that makes sense. I just don't want to be starting 4. If you're doing the lineup for the season, a depth chart, if you will, I don't want Gomez on top as a right back. I don't even know if Gomez wants that to be on top as a right back, to be honest with you. But it's definitely an option. But then here's another thing. If you do that, you just lowered your numbers for a center back anyway. So even if you get another center back, now you need 2 center backs in. And one thing we definitely do need is the left side. I mean, left-footed center back on that side. Because I feel like, Gomez and Matip and even Konate, he's played on the left, but he looks a lot more comfortable on the right for some reason to me, or maybe because he has not played left a lot because obviously Van Dijk is there. So let me ask you guys this for Van Dijk. Like Callie said, John, I mean, he's lost a step and, from the injury. So he might get some of that back. But as we all know, especially the older people in the audience know, some of that stuff leaves and never comes back. Some of them comes back after the injury, but with age, some of it goes away. Some players are able to make the adjustment, regardless of where you play, even if you're up top. I always say as a defender, because that's what I played, but you make adjustments to your game because your speed, agility, strengths are things changing. Chris says he doesn't know what I'm talking about, but I know Chris's age, so I know he's lying. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's, sometimes you make that adjustment. Maybe you do not dive in. I almost felt like Van Dijk was playing last year, almost ignoring the facts of like physical changes that he's having. Do you think he makes that adjustment? Because assuming he does not get those traits back. John, do you think Van Dijk is the kind of guy, I think we talked about this on the Monday podcast, his cockiness is part of his game. Does he shake that off a little bit and kind of like he used to escort guys almost to the goal and say, you know what, at one point I'm gonna know my spot, I'm gonna shoulder you off, and it's gonna be nice and easy. Now he does not speed to be able to keep up sometimes to give that last minute shoulder and stuff. Does he make that adjustment, you think, or is it going to be more of this year?
Well, I think he has to, Tim. To put it bluntly, he has to make that adjustment. I will say this though, the season before last, when we almost won the quad, Virgil looked really good, and that was him coming off an injury. Like he did look like he wasn't as fast as he was pre-injury, but for us to be challenging for the quadruple, he would have had to look really good. And so I would say he still got it in him. The thing is, like you said, the speed and all that is lacking. I do think it's a multitude of things with him. I think last year our midfield didn't do him and our defense any favors. The fact that they were so easily bypassed, our midfield press was so easily bypassed, did not help matters. It's like 1-2 passes, and then you're immediately one-on-one with like Virgil or Matip. I mean, obviously, Virgil, as good as a defender he is, you do not want to put a defender in that position repeatedly, like one-on-one with an attacker, because they're always there are going to be instances where they're going to get burned. So I do think that played a part. And I also do think towards the end of the season where we played Trent in a more free role in an inverted right back role, I think our defense looked better because I did notice that they dropped a little bit. We weren't playing as high a line as we typically do. So that in essence protected Virgil a bit more, I would say. But
so you're more saying we made the adjustment instead of Virgil himself.
Right. We made the adjustment to protect him, and I mean, not taking anything from him. I do think that he was better towards the end of the year. To Chris's point, he is too good of a player not to adjust, and I do think we've burned him out a little bit, especially during his prime years. We always played him, so I do think that is an underrated part of it. Like, he does not rest as much as he should. So I'm expecting a big season from him, in all honesty. And funny you should touch on that, Tim, because I'm actually writing on Virgil for my next piece for the website. So essentially some of the stuff that I'm talking on here is what I'm going to be putting on what I'm writing. So next year for us, I would say at the bare minimum, next year for us to be challenging for the biggest things, Virgil needs to be back at his best at the very minimum. And I do back him to adjust, but in terms of like him being the same player that almost won the Ballon d'Or, I think that ship has sailed. Honestly, I think he's
moment of silence for that center back.
Right. I think he's just a level below that. Like, he's still really good, but just a level below that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's not Superman anymore. I think we just found that out. But that's kind of like a chicken and an egg thing too. I think the midfield did allow those sometimes before. But you had this Van Dijk who could kind of cover up for that, kind of like how Ali sometimes covers up for the mistakes in the defense by making a huge save, and we're kind of used to it. And when he doesn't do it, we're like, oh, what the hell and stuff. Yeah. So, Callie, do you think Van Dijk adjusts, or we adjust to the new Van Dijk, or it's a bit of both combination platter?
Yes. It's definitely going to be a collective effort. I think John makes a great point, and I think a lot of that speaks to how much Jurgen likes to keep a very tight squad, a very small squad. He hasn't, at least from what I've seen with him since he's been here, he doesn't use a whole ton of rotation, except from like early stage of like FA Cups and the FA Cup and Carabao Cup and all those. But he's a guy that he has his squad, he has his 15-16 that he likes to roll with, and that's what we're going to see. So it's definitely going to take, I think, Klopp kind of restructuring how Virgil's used in defense, and also Virgil understanding that he's not Ballon d'Or candidate.
Yeah,
Virgil, and he's in a new phase of his career, and I think he can still be one of the best center backs in the league. It's just going to be a matter of him playing to his strengths now, and understanding that some of the strengths he's had before, maybe aren't as prevalent as they were once upon a time.
Yeah, Ryan says he gives him till next transfer window if he doesn't improve in the beginning of the year.
That's a hot take.
That is a hot take. I don't think, knowing Klopp, I don't think that will ever happen. I think, like we basically play until the wheels come off, and kind of, I think mainly because of Klopp being Klopp, number one, and number two, kind of like Chris says, I think we just use him in a different role. But we kind of talked about this last week, where it's like Van Dijk's lack of pace now, and like drop in form has really exposed in some ways Robertson's defending woes that probably were covered in the past a lot easier by Van Dijk. So that's going to be more depending on like this new formation switch we're talking about, and see if we're going to compensate for that. Because I feel like in the past you could keep shooting Robertson forward. Either you're going to keep Robertson back a lot more to stay with Van Dijk, and you push Trent on the other side, kind of like what we were doing. But I feel like all those balls going behind Robertson now are, I mean, we always talk about the balls going behind Trent because that's been the focus. But I feel like now you're going to have that on the other side. And Chris says, which actually, this is a topic we'll probably get to tonight's podcast as well, but position on the squad has risen with Milner leaving. And does he default to being the captain? Because in the past, we knew that it was Hendo and Milner, and the way Klopp runs it is the other two guys are chosen by the team. And the sad thing is, Virgil does not play well when he's captain. Ryan says, I don't like him as captain. I don't know why, but some players, does he take away from his game and stuff? I'm not sure. But yeah, or maybe because when Virgil's out there as captain, that usually means Hendo is not out there in midfield to clean up things. So that's why we look bad. It's kind of like a chicken and egg conversation. But in terms of giving predictions over here, Callie, next time we see you, I believe, is next week. By then, are we going to be talking about a new guy, or are we going to have a similar conversation of having patience and do some yoga in the morning?
My heart says we'll be celebrating a new signing. My head and history tells me we're going to have this conversation very similarly.
Well, I'm going to bring the goddamn yoga mat. John, I know you're here by Wednesday. By over this week, how soon do you think we're going to be able to get something across the line?
Hold on. Let me pull up the calendar here. Definitely not over the next 2 weeks. We're gonna be having
we're gonna wait till the 4th of July barbecue.
Right. We're definitely gonna go past 4th of July weekend. We're gonna have our barbecues and all that. And we still haven't signed anyone. So yeah. Just being realistic, like what Callie said, it's like a head over heart thing. If I was following my heart, we would have signed Jude Bellingham, we would have signed Mason Mount, we would have signed all of those names. But following my head, yeah, we'd probably be waiting until mid-July until something is done.
So, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. Well, patience is the key word over here. Hopefully, I don't know if we did or not, based on John's mood, but hopefully we calmed everybody down to have some patience. For the sake of John, let's show some patience so he's calm as well, and then we'll see what happens. Kind of like trust the process, as they say, and see how it goes. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it, especially this captaincy talk as well. It'll come up on tonight's podcast. Gally, Bickler, and myself. The usual time, which is 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. We'll be live here. So join us then. Until then, have some patience. Have a great Monday and a great weekend.